Today is the commemoration, the feast day of St. John the Hut Dweller, Venerable John the Hut Dweller. And I confess I don't quite understand exactly why he is considered a saint, although I'll put a link to a Greek Orthodox Sunday school lesson which does that. I also confess I haven't watched all the video. But he reminded me of a lot of folks that I have known, and also of a more general, what shall we say it, problem, artifact, event happening all across this rich land of ours. That phenomenon, I guess I'll call it, is homelessness. Now, as I said, I don't quite understand why St. John got to be a saint. In fact, I think there was a battle over his head as a holy relic. He was basically a rich kid from the capital who liked to read. And in fact, he was rich enough that his parents gave him a really beautiful gospel book, illuminated and gold encrusted and all that sort of thing, at the time when any book was expensive. And he liked to read holy books, and a monk came by one day, and he was all intrigued by the life of monkishness, and the monk said, "Oh, when I come back by, I'll take you to my monastery," and he did, and he ran away from home, so to speak, to a monastery in Bithynia, and there the official hagiography said he was tempted. He was also primarily homesick, and in a twist of the parable of the prodigal son, he went back home, but he didn't say, "Here I am." He was dressed in rags and made a little hut outside the gate of his parents' house, and he lived there for 3 years. His parents were generous enough to paupers who camped at their doorstep that they would send food out every day. The servants would make fun of him because, well, we like to do that. And it was only when he was about to die that he revealed himself to his parents, actually by showing them the gospel. And I have, as I said, or if I hadn't said I am now, I've known a number of homeless people over the years, and I find very often they are children of rich families who, for some reason or another, are sort of discarded, usually when there's a second marriage, and the child of the previous marriage is an embarrassment and somehow or another. But that doesn't seem to have been the case in John's life. Often they are people who just kind of are a little weird. I mean, John is, in the Sunday school lesson that I linked, called unusual, I think. Kids who have a hard time fitting in. Some of the homeless people I have known have been, I suppose, fools for Christ, and some have been full bozo zonkers. I don't shave, and I wear, they're actually not the same clothes every day. I just have multiple copies of the same clothes. But people often think that I'm homeless, and I find that interesting. I like to see how people interact with people, others of us that they think are homeless. And I had really one quite interesting experience with the homeless community in Santa Fe once. I was on my way there actually to celebrate a wedding, and I took the I was living in Arkansas at the time, and I took the beautiful train along the coast and got to Santa Fe a few days early. It was nearly Christmas, very cold, but a dry cold. And I wanted a little time sort of to see what was going on in town without being caught up in all the festivities of a family Christmas and the like. So I didn't tell my friends I was there, and I, in fact, slept a couple of nights in a field besides St. Bede's Episcopal Church. And it was close enough to one of my favorite morning coffee spots to be convenient. And I went to sleep there the first night, and pretty soon I heard noises of other people camping around me. Some of them engaged in carnal pleasures, I think. And I'll get back to that in a bit. So in the morning, I thought, well, gosh, I don't want to scare people. So I walked to some of the nearby camps and said, knock, knock, because they were still asleep. I guess they didn't have enough money to go have breakfast at the local watering hole, and I wasn't generous enough or brave enough or whatever to invite them to join me. So I said, hey, if you hear me over there, it's just me. Later that day, I went to visit a Roman Catholic bookstore owner friend of mine who was very involved with the homeless folks of make me have any more light. I don't know why the light in here is so odd today. There is sunshine outside, but I guess it's just here. Anyway, and he said, "Oh, what are you doing?" And I told him. He said, "Oh, I've heard about you." He was kind of checking up on some of his friends among the homeless folks of Santa Fe, and they said there was a new guy in town whose name is Knock Knock. Apparently, in the homeless community of Santa Fe, it's kind of like the community of YouTube, and people have their own special little handles. My homeless handle is Knock Knock. Well, I may not be homeless, and I kind of live in a hut, but I'm not that withdrawn from the world. The world comes to me every day in all sorts of ways, and a lot of the time by YouTube. And the YouTube algorithm being what it is, I get recommended a lot of Christian videos to watch. And I find that the things that seem to be burning issues for an awful lot of Christians these days are, well, sexual impurity, carnal indulgences, which, can take over our lives, no doubt about that. And what translation of the Bible or what prayer book is the best, or whether or not some patriarch or pope is indeed a valid patriarch or pope. And although I see from time to time some videos about homelessness, I haven't seen any from a specifically Christian perspective, which seems a little odd. It seems to me, with homelessness as easily visible as it is on our streets, that good Christian folk might be a little bit concerned with that. But I don't find that often to be true. There is what is his name? Shane Clyburn, who has probably made some videos about that. We'll check that in a minute. But I find that Shane Clyburn is often attacked by Orthodox Christians for not being Orthodox. Yeah, there's O'Shane. I can remember at a time when I was living in a little Christian community in Bellingham, and we we took in a number of homeless folks. One of the first trans folks I met was through that little community. Anyway, we read his books. I'm happy to see that I'm not seeing anybody too upset about old Shane these days. Well, one of the things that Shane said was to remind folks that Jesus had said, "The poor you will always have with you," and he was implying that for Christians we should have a certain solidarity with the poor, rather than finding them, as we so often do, a bloody inconvenience. I wish I could, at this point, give some wise solution to the phenomenon of homelessness in America and so much of the developed world, and I think it's very complex, obviously, and I have been for a trial used one of those AI things, and I asked whichever it was, being or I don't know, what the solution was, and it came up with a typical sort of congressional bill approach, stuff that would generate a lot of money for the people who were solving homelessness, and probably do not much for homelessness at all, because between the breakdown of the family and drugs and indifference and the high cost of living and the greed of all of us good Christian folks, it is just harder and harder for an awful lot of people to find a place to live, both physically and metaphorically. But there are lots, as I mentioned, lots of videos about the best Bible translation or the best prayer book, or how awful sexual immorality, impurities, whatever, are. And, I have my opinions about all those things, but I do think it's kind of interesting that if one assumes that there is some sort of final test for one's discipleship, we have the crib. I'm using one of my sometimes favorite translations here, the New English Standard Version. When they give a little heading called "The Final Judgment." When the Son of Man comes in his glory, and all the angels with him, then he will sit on his glorious throne. Before him will be gathered all the nations, and he will separate people one from another, as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. And he will place the sheep on his right, but the goats on the left. Then the king will say to those on his right, "Come, you who are blessed by my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me drink. I was a stranger, and you welcomed me. I was naked, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you visited me. I was in prison, and you came to me." Then the righteous will answer him, saying, "Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you drink? And when did we see you a stranger and welcome you, or naked and clothe you? And when did we see you sick or in prison and visit you?" And the king will answer them, "Truly I say to you, as you did it to one of the least of these, my brothers, you did it to me." Then he will say to those on his left, Depart from me, you cursed, into the eternal fire prepared for the devil and his angels. For I was hungry, and you gave me no food. I was thirsty, and you gave me no drink. I was a stranger, and you did not welcome me. Naked, and you did not clothe me. Sick and in prison, and you did not visit me. Then they also will answer, saying, Lord, when did we see you hungry, or thirsty, or a stranger, or naked, or sick in prison, and did not minister to you? Then he will answer them, saying, Truly I say to you, as you did not do it to one of the least of these, you did not do it to me. And these will go away into eternal punishment, but the righteous into eternal life. Now, as I said, I don't have a quick and easy answer to this problem. But I do think that if we don't even give it a 3-hour podcast every day, every week, or every month, or, occasionally, like we do whether or not Papa Francisco is a valid pope or not, or whether pornography is the worst thing that has ever happened to the world, we won't be able to visit, clothe, feed, those sorts of things that we are expected to do if we're going to consider ourselves Christians. And it's not easy. I mentioned Santa Fe, and Santa Fe has 2 Episcopal churches, and they're both kind of cool congregations, but one is very, very liberal, and one is very conservative. And it's interesting because when I was looking for a picture of the field that I slept in, it said that the liberal one had given $1.4 million to pay off medical bills of people. And, that's a good thing. But the other church, let's just say they do a lot of stuff without letting their right hand know what the left hand is doing without any publicity. They, for instance, recognize the problems of mostly street kids in Santa Fe. And there are street kids in Santa Fe for just every reason you can imagine. I met a lot of homeless or semi-homeless or nearly homeless kids when I lived there, young men, in their early 20s mostly, who were kind of like John the Hut Dweller. They had run away from their rich parents back east and looking for a way of life more suited to their unusual choices. And the conservative church, well, I may as well go ahead and name it, it's Holy Faith, also recognized that they couldn't get these kids to come to church, but these kids were in need of an awful lot of help. So without admitting who it was, they bought this building in a part of town kind of near where I was sleeping in a field those 2 nights, like shepherds. It was nearly Christmas, and but it was a dry cold. And they would have meals for them there in a warming center and the like, but they never said that it was the church that was doing it, because the kids would not accept help from the church. And their thought was, you can't preach the gospel to a frozen body. It's just not as effective. And so that another time that I was there, I had come into a bit of inheritance, and so I was able to buy some hams and make sandwiches for some of the kids. And it was interesting talking to the people who were making the sandwiches, because they weren't talking the political conservatism that they were accused of. They used the wrong version of the prayer book and the like, the wrong rite. They were concerned for the kids that could be their own kids out there on the streets. But it's hard for us to rise above our righteous righteous opinions, to recognize that perhaps my little problem today is not that big after all, and that perhaps even, my trying to help someone else solve their problems might solve my own. Anyway, well, if there is a podcast out there about what should be the church's response to homelessness, and that's and I'm not even supposed to say homeless, I'm supposed to say unhoused, and I don't think you can say drug addicts or any of those things, but anyway, I digress. But except, of course, those are all little ways that we have to avoid facing the real problems that are around us, and the failure of our Christian society to provide an environment in which people can find themselves at home. Anyway, if you know of a podcast or something else that addresses this issue, let me know in the comments, please. I apologize for how weird the lighting is. Maybe I can adjust it when I edit. But, trust me, behind me there's a great light. The people who sit in darkness have seen a great light. And there are a lot of folks sitting in darkness these days, and maybe we should be doing more to share the light with them, to share a warm blanket, a hot sandwich, a visit in their misery. Well, thanks for watching.